It is time to say good afternoon to CJAD 800 legal contributor Chris Dimakos. And Chris, you know, the little tease we did for your segment today said here are two words you really want to be careful about considering if you're not happy with where you are right now in terms of a job. And those two words are I quit. And we say this because it turns out January is the year, or the month rather, where more people, in fact, start a new job, which I guess means leave an old job. So you want to consider your options before going and before using those two words. And the reason is because if you go ahead and act that way and just, I quit, I'm out of here, you could be potentially costing yourself a lot of money. So let's get into that.
Right. And it's such an important time of year for employers and employees. Many employers, they have their meetings or budget meetings. They take a look at, if they're over, under, where they need to cut. And unfortunately, for so many people, the quickest way to lower your overhead is through payroll. That's where they look first to cut. And so, the employee ends up suffering in those fronts. But also we have, January being a new year, a fresh new start. Many people are saying, I don't like where I am. I'm not happy where I am. And they look for other places. The only thing I tell everyone is be careful. Be careful about when you're looking to change, to understand exactly the equity you've built up in that company. So, for example, we talk about the words I quit. I quit is such a powerful word because it actually severs that relationship between employer and employee. And that relationship is usually one-sided. There's a lot of power for the employer at the very beginning. They can get rid of you for very little without any excuse whatsoever. But if we take Quebec, for example, once that relationship grows and past 2 years of service, well, then there's a huge shift in power that goes towards the employee. Now the employer has to have a good reason to let you go. Now the employer has to compensate you if they let you go without cause. And you start building every year after that equity and it's job stability and you have money there. So what I tell everyone is before you just run and say the words I quit, understand exactly what that job relationship, that bond between you and your current employer have. What's it worth in dollars? What is that amount worth? And then you can evaluate new job opportunities and new employers and what they're offering you. And many times, you might look at a salary increase of 2 or 3%, but are you looking at what you're leaving on the table with your current employment? So it's a volatile time of year in terms of jobs and rotation and people coming in and coming out. But so often we neglect to think, hey, what exactly do I have here? What have I built up in terms of equity and job security? And you got to put a number on that.
Well, you talked about you used the word evaluate. So if you have made the decision in your mind to leave that job, right? And before you go, I quit. So what's involved in that evaluation? I mean, how can you attach actual numbers to it? Does it even make sense to go to your boss and say, I'm thinking about quitting and try to work out how it would play out or not?
Right. So you fall into, I get this question a lot. You usually fall under one of two categories. Either you're happy at work and your boss is happy with you and there's no reason to think that your job is on the line. And then there are the other ones where it's not going well at work and your employer has shown that they're not happy with you and you've gotten a performance review. So in both cases, you should approach it differently. In the case where you look like you're being pushed out or they're not happy with your performance, so many times employees will say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. I'm out. I quit. Been there for 6 or 7 years.
Right.
And potentially, the reason why they're pushing you out is not only the employee's fault. There could be a lot of fault there on the employer as well. And if that's the case, well, then a tribunal would say the employer has to pay you reasonable notice to be able to push you out the door. What does that mean for 6 or 7 years? It depends on what you do, how old you are, what the market's like. But you can be talking about 6 months of salary. So when you look at that, if you're getting paid, I don't know, $60,000 a year, that's $30,000 that you would be entitled to if you went through the whole process of being let go and negotiating with your employer. So, and that's one situation. The other one is you're doing well at work. They're happy with you. You want to leave. What you should do is you should sit down with your employer and say, I'm not happy with my salary. I'd like to renegotiate this and start the conversation about what you can be getting elsewhere. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, the employer sometimes says, you know what, if this place is not for you, we're letting you go. Well, then they let you go. And that's a lot different than you saying, you know what, I quit, I'm walking out of here. And I'm not telling you that you should never use the words I quit, but just understand what exactly it represents for you as the employee. Because employers, they benefit from I quit. Employees, not so much.
As you go through this, I'm trying to imagine someone in a situation like that who's listening to this advice and saying, okay, I should be rational here and just don't do something crazy like walk in and I quit. As exciting as that might sound, if you're really unhappy at your job, can you have a discussion with an employer about terms if that's what you've decided to do?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Sometimes employers are like, I just want to leave. And I'm not telling you shouldn't, and I'm not saying you should never say the words I quit. What I do recommend is don't say it if you don't understand what it represents. If you're not 100% sure of what that number is. And if you know what it is and you evaluate it and you look at your new prospect of employment and that's good and it takes care and it checks off all the boxes, go ahead. You can quit in glorious fashion. It reminds me of the Seinfeld episode where George quit. But you can make it as glamorous as you'd like. But as long as I highly recommend, know what it means to you in terms of dollars, know what it means to you in terms of job security that you might be leaving behind, and then go right ahead. If you don't, well, then you should know about that. And then if you're concerned about leaving that behind, well, you're absolutely right. You can sit down with your employer and say, look, this is what's not working out for me here. I'm not happy with this, this, and this, and let that conversation go. You don't have to get to the ultimatum part where you're saying I'm going to leave if I don't get what I want. You just have to bring up these issues with your employer, and sometimes organically that can evolve into, hey, it's not working out here.
And by the way, and I think we discussed this previously, the idea that if you've made up your mind that you're going to leave and you don't want to leave money on the table because you've been at this job for 6, 7, 10 years, whatever else, maybe the best thing to do, I hate to kind of put it this way, is to get the employer to come to you and suggest, you know what, you're not doing your job the right way, or your performance review didn't add up. Get them to initiate that, because then you can negotiate a way out and get yourself perhaps more money. Am I wrong?
Yeah, listen, the one thing about employment law versus every other sector of law, like people that practice in bankruptcy or corporate, employment law is so unique because every situation is so different that you're dealing with people, you're dealing with actual personalities, you're dealing with companies. Every case is so much different. But what I will say is, when you are in a situation where, you kind of see the writing on the wall that this is not going to be where I'm going to be at for the next 15 years.
Right.
Well, when you start making decisions or talking or having conversations with your superiors about performance, these things can come up. But yeah, you're absolutely right. What I don't recommend is you start tanking at the job on purpose. You come in late on purpose. You don't do your work on. Well, then you start giving the employer ammo to let you go because of performance, and we don't want that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. These things somehow, when one party is not happy, it usually pushes the conversation towards a departure, and that's where these conversations have to be had.
All right, there you go, Chris Dimakos. Chris, thank you very much, and all the best to you. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Aaron. Same to you.
Introducing Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
Join me for an insider look on a wild ride through 40 years of global rock and roll.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Or ask your smart speaker to play Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio.
Who's ready to rock?
Kids wanna rock.